The lawyers are the ones making the most money out of this deal. They're making like $200 million.
Yeah.
The average consumer is only going to get about $10.
If you want to opt in.
If you want to opt in for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, $10, great. Can't even buy McDonald's Big Mac and fries today, right? Who wants to go to McDonald's anyway?
You're right.
But
There goes that sponsorship.
There goes that sponsor. I was just getting ready to land
Sorry.
them. Hello, this is James Harper. Welcome to this week's episode of the Real Estate Halftime Show, coming to you live here at the secret headquarters in Hendersonville, Tennessee, the Emerald Room. We have a very special guest here today to talk everything and anything about the most recent NAR settlement. So without further ado, let's get going.
It's time for the Real Estate Halftime Show. Sit back, relax, and listen to Nashville's premier inside scoop to real estate with the Mortgage Extraordinaire himself, James Harper.
All right, welcome back to the show. We have in the studio Michael Swift, who is currently a broker with EXP, and we're happy to have him here in the studio. Been trying to track this man down for a minute, and we finally got him in the studio. We hog-tied him. Allowed him to come on in here, sit down with us, and we're going to talk a lot today about the NAR, the National Association of Realtors settlement that just hit the streets a couple of weeks ago. And so Michael wants to share some of his experience, also his knowledge and his opinions, and I'll probably throw in a couple here or there. So welcome to the show, Michael.
I appreciate it, James. Thanks for having me here.
Awesome. But before we dive in, tell us a little bit about yourself, Michael. How did you get into the business? Why is it so important to you? And just a little bit about your story.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm from Nashville. I was born and raised here. And
born and raised?
Yeah, man. So, I'm a native. Had some Cherokee blood.
Oh, cool.
So I'm actually from a divorced family and the youngest of five. My father was in real estate sales and also insurance.
Kind of in your blood then.
Yes, it is. So somehow, one way or the other, God had plans for me to be in real estate. So here I am. But that really started back in 2004. I was with a luxury pool and spa company for about a year and a half. And then I got my real estate license after that. I started a new construction, and I did that for about 2 years.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because a lot of people, especially myself, for example, I'm an engineer by degree. I didn't just want to get in the mortgage business. And so same with real estate, right? I mean, I don't think people just wake up one day and say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. It just, you fall into it, kind of becomes a little of a passion once you dive in. Does that sound true for you?
Well, it is. Well, I've always been interested in construction. I remember growing up, and my father, he sold condos for a company. And I'll never forget, we lived in the community, and I loved going and playing in the construction sites. So that was a lot of fun. So new construction, when I got started in real estate, was like the perfect place for me. I was like a fish to water.
When do you think that Nashville, about what time frame did you feel like Nashville really changed the landscape of it being this country theme, very traditional kind of city to, oh my gosh, this is starting to bust at the seams here, and this is really going to be a little mini Atlanta or whatever, mini Vegas or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, that's a great question.
What year do you think?
Well, I believe 2010, 2011, we started seeing some huge changes, but Nashville's been growing over the last 20 years like crazy.
It has.
So in 2012 is when we started to see prices come back. That was a really great year to be in real estate. So we consistently saw an increase in development in Nashville. So today there are subdivisions in areas you never thought subdivisions would be. So as far as the home market goes, it's huge. But the city itself, with the high rises, new construction that's going on right now, there have been cranes all over Nashville for the last 8 years.
At least, yes.
In 10 years that have just been amazing to watch Nashville's growth. I mean, I was the young guy growing up in Nashville. I remember hitting Broadway and 2nd Avenue, and that was the place to be. But now there's so many different pockets in Nashville that you can go and have a great time. You have 12 South, Germantown, West End used to be the place to go.
East Nashville.
East Nashville's booming right now, and it will continue to boom. But we're seeing areas like north of Nashville right now that's blowing up. Murfreesboro, one of the number one cities in our area, has just been in the top 20 places to relocate to and growth probably for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting to watch, and being a part of that growth as a realtor and helping so many people relocate here, because we really have seen the migration from other states into Tennessee. And so it stopped being this podunk hillbilly, kind of location, think country music and Charlie Daniels and, we love country music. This is where I'm from. So, used to love seeing live music downtown all the time. But in terms of how people viewed Nashville, that started to shift. And I believe that really started to shift back in 2015 and 16. 2018 was a really great year in real estate. Lots of property exchanged hands, lots of development was going on. But when COVID hit, it really caused people, for some reason or the other, to want to move to Tennessee. And I think we mentioned hit some of those points.
Politics could be part of that.
Yeah.
I guess sales tax could be part of that. Something new and different. Sunshine State, sort of, with some tornadoes. I guess that'd be a reason for me to want to move here. But no, I moved here in 1998, and I thought it was the best thing since sliced bread when I moved here. And I moved up from Indiana, actually probably even Michigan at the time. And so when I moved to Nashville, I thought, oh, wow, this is a cool place. And, it has continued to grow every year that I've been here, and it continues to just keep having more fun. You can't even get to all that's available in Nashville anymore like you used to. You used to kind of know what the best restaurant is that just opened, or the honky tonk, or shopping, or whatever that might be. You can't even keep up with it now.
Speaking of restaurants, Charleston used to be one of the capitals of the East as far as restaurants, and Nashville quickly became one of the top culinary locations in the United States. So you see a ton of restaurants opening up, and it will continue. We're not seeing the growth slow down. So that's excellent news for us. I like to eat.
Oh, me too. So tell us a little bit more about yourself. You and also your wife is in real estate. And so you're kind of a husband and wife team, kind of, but not kind of.
That story is fun because I actually met my wife because of real estate, and that was in 2012, 2013. But I'll get to that. I'll go back in time a little bit for when I got my real estate license and I started new construction. I decided to get my contractor's license back in 2006 because I planned to build. So I was certified in residential, commercial, and industrial. I had planned to build. I was actually interviewing companies at the time that were going to be my subs for construction. Well, when 2008 happened and the housing bubble went pop, so did that idea. I actually put that on ice and focused on my real estate company. But I took care of my parents at home for a few years. And through the downturn, I went to college, 2009 to 2014. I graduated from MTSU with a political science degree, emphasis on law, with an economics minor. And so that was what my plan was. In 2012, I met my wife online through a friend who introduced us, someone who bought a home with me several years before this. And she just happened to be in real estate internationally. She was in Belgium, France, and Morocco.
Wow.
She did luxury mortgage and real estate in those countries. She speaks 4 languages. Somehow, this Nashville boy ended up with this beautiful Moroccan princess. So to continue my wife, she speaks 4 languages: Arabic, 4 dialects, French, Italian, and English. And the Italian is really important because we actually met in Italy for the first time in person. And I fell in love with her before we met. We were on an international phone plan. We were doing Skype at the time.
Skype.
And she was just so amazing as a person. And so we made that trip and had an unbelievable time. Well, she moved here several weeks after that trip, and we've been together ever since.
So what do you think your specialty is in selling real estate? You've done a lot of transactions over the last, 20 years.
Sure.
And And what's the highest number of transactions you've done in a year, and where do you feel like your niche is?
Close to 60 transactions a year. And that was with a team of 5.
That's full time.
Yeah.
That's
and
full time.
Personally, I was probably doing 45 to 50 when I first started growing a team. So we were jamming. We've done over $100 million in real estate sales.
So you know a
in the
thing or
last
two
20
about
years.
real estate. Yeah. That just doesn't happen by chance, by the way.
No, it don't. And, I have learned quite a lot. As far as specialization goes, I've represented both buyers and sellers, all types of property from a little lot to a 576-acre farm. So there's a lot in between. There's so many different property types. But on the purchase side, I really focused on representing buyers. And we do a wonderful job of listing property. We're certified luxury marketing specialist, and I'm a broker, not an affiliate. So, I put a lot of time, energy, and effort into making sure my clients are served properly, that they get the service that they need, that they're protected. And that's a big part of representation that we can get into.
Yes, we're going to, sure.
But that's our history. As far as representation goes, our service area used to be just about 45 minutes to an hour. Now we've expanded that quite a bit, but we're starting to narrow it down again because we had to go out a little bit further because of the home prices in Nashville. That increase in spike in home prices, especially today with interest rates, has caused a big issue. So you want to work with a realtor. Yeah. I mean, so being educated on the market, being educated as far as income, interest rates, and how that impacts payment, that's a really big deal today. But we've helped relocate hundreds of families here to Middle Tennessee.
So let's jump into that, because that's where the meat and potatoes of the show really is. And thanks for sharing a little bit of your testimony about how you got into the business. And, it is important to align yourself. If you're a listener out there and you're looking to buy a home, don't know where to start, or maybe it's your second or third home. Yep. Call Michael. There is this new trend that's really going to start surfacing really quickly as of now about buyer representation. And before, it may have meant something different than it's going to mean today or tomorrow.
Sure.
And that all has to do with the most recent lawsuit settlement with the National Association of Realtors.
Sure.
And it was over a $400 million lawsuit. This is big news. It's all over major news networks, all over the internet. And there's all these interpretations of what it really means. But at the end of the day, if we want to simplify that into 2 or 3 bullet points, what does the settlement really mean on how we move forward with mortgage transactions or real estate transactions? I guess it is a mortgage transaction, but the real estate transaction aspect of things.
Sure. Well, that's a great question. And that's one that everyone's asking right now who's thinking about buying, selling, or if you're a realtor and you're listing property or representing buyers, this is extremely important.
Some realtors are like freak out mode. I mean, like, oh my God, the sky is falling.
Well, right? there's a good reason for that too.
Yes.
They're not prepared. They never have been prepared.
Yes. And why is that?
Value proposition is important. Understanding
why proposition.
Yes. Why you have a real estate license to begin with. The bar to entry is very low for real estate agents. You don't have to have a college education. All you have to do is have a GED or a high school diploma, and you can get a real estate license. That means every buyer and seller out there today is working with somebody that maybe they haven't vetted. Yeah, potentially. Right. They haven't maybe vetted. Those are some good questions to ask. You have your good, better, best, and then you have your great and your greatest agents out there. So there's different levels, and not every realtor is created equal. But I love that. Just to answer some of your questions about where we are today with the NAR settlement and why that's so impactful, let's look at the history of National Association of Realtors. 1908 is when it was established. There was no MLS. You didn't have a computer. And everyone who knows anything about real estate, these books were generated in the 60s. And every agent or every office would get a copy once or twice a month that showed all of the listed property. That would have been fun, right? So,
kind of like the big J.C. Penney catalog.
Yeah.
Yeah, that used to get in the mail. I mean,
yeah,
exactly. Sears catalog.
That's right. Yeah.
I didn't realize that, so I learned something today.
Well,
so you get this big NAR catalog of homes that are for sale that can already be sold by the time they print the copy.
100%. That's wild. So you had
out of stock.
You had
this
buyers.
One's out of stock.
Yeah.
Were there coupons?
Were there coupons? Yeah.
I don't know. There may have been free
Advertisements?
pizza, olives.
We should try to find one of those books. I wonder if they still exist anywhere. That'd be kind of cool. I've never seen anything surface on the internet.
You could probably
Let
find
me
it
write
somewhere.
that down. Michael Swift task.
You're gonna have to
find an NAR
MLS
real estate
book.
guide.
But I think it's important to note that prior to that, as a buyer, you had to go to a real estate office to find out which listings they had. They weren't co-opting, which means that if you're working with this real estate company, you're working
with just their listings?
Yeah, with just their listings.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't even like the NAR
right
were affiliated with all.
There's a difference between a real estate agent and a realtor. You're only a realtor if you're a member of the National Association of Realtors. We can get into ethics. That will be fun, but I don't really want to get into ethics right now. But in terms of how they operated, the reason I even mention ethics is because there's a code of ethics that realtors have to abide by. It's a higher standard. It should be a higher standard. So National Association of Realtors was established to create continuity, but professionalism in our industry, right? So where did buyer representation come from? This is a really important part to this settlement and how it's going to impact representation today. It started in the 90s. And why was that? Well, let's go back in time prior to those booklets and buyers having to go to listing company or real estate companies to see their listings. Mm-hmm. Well, those listing agents or those companies represented the seller. They didn't represent the buyer. So what happened? They got hosed. Not every case. And you won't believe that people are good people, but I like to trust but verify. So the buyers had no representation. So when they met with the listing agent has a fiduciary responsibility. We can get into what that means to the seller. That's their client. Their job is to look out for their interest, not the buyer's, which means that you're walking into an unrepresented scenario that is going to cause you possibly to have to pay a higher price, get less than optimal terms on a contract.
Which could mean seller concessions or something of that nature.
Absolutely. If you don't know how to read the contract, you could lose money. As a matter of fact, a seller could take all the light fixtures out, cabinets, countertops even. If you don't read that contract, there's a lot of things that can happen. There's a lot of horror stories we can talk about. So representation is extremely important. As a buyer, you want to make sure that you're seeing all the houses available to you. Well, now we have the internet. And so a realtor who is worth their weight in salt is going to know the process to take someone through to make it easy for them. And that's what we specialize in. We specialize in taking somebody who's interested in buying property to educate them on the market, set up a professional home search. You can set up home searches on websites today, but it's not going to be the same thing than meeting with a professional realtor who's great at what they do and to be able to.
So when we get back to the NAR settlement, what do you think are the top 2 or 3 heartburn points that need to be taken away from this that make it simple for all the listeners out there, other real estate agents or even buyers that are trying to figure out what this really means for them? What are the 2 or 3 takeaways that simplify this whole debacle?
Sure. So the lawyers are the ones making the most money out of this deal. They're making like $200 million. Yeah. The average consumer is only going to get about $10 per claimant.
If you want to opt in.
If you want to opt in for it. Yeah, $10, great.
Woo.
You can't even You can't
even go to Starbucks.
Yeah, you can't even buy McDonald's Big Mac and fries today, right? Who wants to go to McDonald's anyway?
Right.
But in any event, so
There goes that sponsorship.
There goes that sponsor. I was just getting ready to land.
sorry,
them.
James. I know that you were planning on
I just
Ronald
had
McDonald
McDonald's
to come
this
back
morning.
Egg McMuffins.
Egg McMuffin, yeah. So, what are the 2 or 3 takeaways? What do we got here?
All right. So,
What are we working with?
with NAR, what that means is that, look, first and foremost, commissions are negotiable. They always have been. I think that's the most important part to take out of this, because people think that it's going to lower prices. It's not going to lower the price. Do you think a seller, James, is going to reduce their price because they're not paying a certain X percentage to the buyer agency? They never have. There is a co-op. The listing agent, when they meet with a potential seller and they go through their presentation, they sign off on the agreement. In that agreement, it says how much that the listing agent is going to offer the buyer agency. And the seller can have a conversation about that. They never had to offer anything to a buyer. Maybe $1. There was something there for compensation. There's a compensation field in the MLS, but it's always been negotiable. That seller comp allowed for the buyer to have representation, and it was understood that that buyer agency fee was covered under that, right? So now, as a buyer, you can be represented and go look for property, and you have a fiduciary taking care of you. Just like the listing agent. Yeah, listing agent takes care of the seller. They have a fiduciary responsibility to them. The buyer agency has a responsibility to the buyer. But here's the problem, James. Most agents, I would say, I bet you, I would throw
Large
some
percentage.
dice down on this, or I would make a big, large bet on this. 80% of agents do not get a buyer's agreement signed before they help or before they go view houses with somebody. That's about to change. Come May 1st, as a buyer, this is going to be huge because the folks thinking about buying property today don't realize that they're going to have to meet with an agent, whether it's the listing agent or an agency that might represent their interest, which I would say the latter is the best form to go for that. Either you're going to sign some type of agreement stating some type of fee for service is going to be have to be paid. If an agent is requiring a fee for that, I mean, the agent doesn't have to charge anything. They don't for that particular house, but they won't get paid. I don't know who's going to work for free.
Right. So the good news is out of this so far is, number one, the buyer representation is going to have to be better documented or signed prior to any engagement with the buyer out there looking.
Well,
Is that safe to say?
when an agent first speaks to someone thinking about buying a home, they really need to meet with them, go over the process, go over the agreement, the exclusive agreement, to show what they offer in terms of their services, what the protections are, and go over their fee for service up front. If they do that, then the buyer's educated, they understand, they can either choose
What
to
they're
sign
getting.
that agreement.
What they're
or
getting
not.
for that agreement.
That's correct, yeah. So most agents haven't done that. In my career, there's no one I've ever worked with who hasn't signed that agreement. So as far as value proposition, I would never work with an agent who just got their license. I think you need at least 2 years experience. And I would prefer to work with somebody who has at least done 25 transactions if I were going into a new market. But I would look for the best. I would look for somebody who's had 100 transactions under the belt or more, because stories that I could tell you that we've run into where we've had to contact our title company, attorneys, our brokers in terms of situations, a more experienced agent is going to give the greatest opportunity for someone
For resolve.
for resolve and for better pricing, better negotiated terms, and also protecting their trust money, because you don't want to lose that. But we could chat about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So NAR basically says from the lawsuit, I should say, NAR has settled to say basically that real estate agents, listing agents, realtors are not allowed to post in MLS about what?
Commissions.
Commissions.
So as far as comp commissions, but
So it doesn't mean that the game has really changed with how a buyer's agent and a listing agent gets paid as far as the totality.
That's correct.
It can't be advertised in MLS. NMLS is for the mortgage side.
Right.
So MLS. So it can't be advertised in MLS as to what that compensation looks like. But it doesn't mean that it still can't be conducted in the same manner outside of MLS.
That is correct. So the rules establishing those guidelines. So I can post any compensation to a co-oping broker on my personal website. It just can't be in the MLS. So it's going to force agents that are representing buyers to have better conversations with the listing agents today, which is something we've always done.
Yeah, there's been a lot of assumptions probably up to this point, right?
Yeah. So you really want to, as an agent, if you're listening, you want to make sure you have a relationship with that listing agent, know what the compensation is that they're sharing, so you can share that with your buyer. But even prior to that, that representation agreement is
at the end of the
really,
day,
really important.
At the end of the day, if I'm a realtor and I'm trying to get a buyer under my belt, why wouldn't I want to have this buyer agreement? Is it because I would want to try to help secure my paycheck to some degree by having an agreement in place that says, hey, if I'm going to go out here and show you these houses, I'm going to drive all over God's creation, I'm going to use my gas, I'm going to go to McDonald's and eat.
Sure.
McDonald's plugged back in here. Then I want to make sure I'm getting compensated for my time.
Sure, absolutely.
My time is not free. So I would think that this whole settlement, this whole lawsuit is going to make that buyer representation stronger, better, and help protect that buyer's agent for their commissions and time, and also force communication with the listing agent prior to, so that everything is a little more transparent and the ambiguity is not there maybe like it was before. And oh, by the way, if the real estate agent is really good, they shouldn't have a problem going to the buyer and explaining their explanation of services to help get that agreement in place. Did I miss anything?
I think that was good. Yeah, I think you covered it. We can go peace out on that one.
Peace out. Oh, wow.
So no, you really touched on a lot of great things there. Of course, this is going to look. I'm not a real estate attorney.
Me neither. By disclaimer.
Exactly. But
we're going to put a little disclaimer at the bottom. This is not.
But law states that as agents, we're supposed to identify which party we represent, and explain to a potential buyer or seller what that means. And agents just don't do that. I'm not speaking for everybody, but in historically, the stories I've heard, the circles I've been in the last 20 years, the experience I have, that's the case. So you asked the question, well, why wouldn't an agent talk about this?
Yeah.
They're scared. They're afraid.
Afraid
they don't want to lose.
Afraid of the word no.
Yeah, they don't want to turn off a potential client because
they have to sign something.
Yeah. And today, this NAR settlement is going to change things. So if you're not willing to talk about it and you don't know how to talk about it and you can't present a value proposition, you probably won't be in this business very much longer.
Like we've talked about before the show, 2010, a lot of transparency had to come to the mortgage industry with the Frank Dodd Act, and we were all kicking and scraping and complaining all along the way, but the transparency has really helped our side of the business a lot.
And it was needed.
Yeah.
And
it was definitely needed. Yeah.
In 2008, you could prior to that, stated income loans. Wow.
And
wonder why the housing market went
as many
south.
points as you can and inflate the closing cost out, to the moon and back and get, paid on it. Yeah, it was crazy. All right. So what is the craziest transaction that you recall going through, for all the listeners out there that like to hear these stories? Does anything come top of mind to you?
Oh, there's several, but there was a fun moment in time where I was showing some property to somebody, and we saw several homes, and we walk into the house, and it's a nice house. You know, we've had a great experience in the house, and I open the closet door in the bathroom, and all of a sudden, there's the towel raises up like this and starts moving back and forth, and I was like, "Oh my God, what is this?" Everybody kind of freaked out. Well, it's probably it was some type of animal. We were just hoping that it wasn't something serious, right? So I pull the towel back, and this hairless cat's head pops out, and then everybody we thought it was a rat, right? Anyhow.
So there was a cat that somehow was in the closet.
Yes. Somehow.
Probably to just keep it away from you guys.
Either that or it hid in the closet and waited for us to show up, to open the door.
And the owner probably didn't know the cat was in the closet.
Didn't know the cat was in the closet, yeah.
So you just wanted to look in this closet just to see space and whatever, and boom, this mysterious hairless cat,
yeah. Yeah. Freaked us out.
Oh, that'd freak me out just because they're ugly anyway, I think.
Yeah, it wasn't nothing against cats.
It
wasn't the best experience.
There goes our sponsorship. All right. Well, that is a good one. That is a good one. And we'll kind of close this out here.
Sure.
What are 2 myths that are coming from this that is causing a lot of chatter on the street that just simply isn't correct? And I'm going to think of maybe one of them, and that is that buyers aren't going to be able to afford having a buyer's agent because they already can't afford closing cost and down payment now. So how do you solve that myth?
Well, that's myth number one.
Number one.
I'm glad that you asked that question, James, because it's so important that as a buyer, you have representation today. And that compensation can be offered by the seller still.
By the seller still.
That's correct. MLS, until that compensation field goes away, we can work with that listing agent. As soon as that comes about regarding that scenario, the listing agent, you'll see how much that compensation is. But once that goes away, once that field disappears on the MLS, it changes things. So the buyer agency will have to work with the listing agent, but it's
still an opportunity for the seller to pay for the buyer's agent representation.
That's right. And so once that compensation field disappears, then in the offer, you can ask for your buyer agency to be paid for by the seller.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
I think that's myth number one, that if you get anything from this episode, that is just... We still don't have to change the way we play the game on compensation with it being all pushed to the buyer.
There's one thing I'd like to add because the listing agency can I think there's a concession field that's going to come. So instead of having compensation for an agent, it could be concessions towards buyer's closing costs, and that could be a part of it.
It could be a part of it, and that was actually segueing right into myth number 2, and that is, how are the buyer's commissions going to be incorporated into seller concessions?
And that's exactly
which then affects how much concessions can be paid in the mortgage transaction, which could then hinder the buyer's ability to buy. And there's been this chatter and conversation about, okay, what is HUD going to do? What's Fannie and Freddie going to do to increase seller concession contribution limits so that this can be incorporated in somehow? Whether the agencies decide to do that, who knows? Yeah. But really, it's a myth because it shouldn't need to be a part of the equation right now, as long as the buyer agent and the seller agent are having communication about who's paying what and how much, right?
Sure. And I think if you're working with true professionals, when you have a buyer agency and a listing agency working together, their job is to contract for their clients. So not only should your agent be an advocate for you in terms of price and terms, but also an advocate for you in terms of getting a contract, making that contract happen. So you actually go through the process to take care of any conditions in the contract so you can go to the closing table. And that's a part of it, closing cost. Somebody may not have who might be in a financial position where they need closing costs paid by the seller. What does that look like? I think the buyer agency will have to work more on that end, and the listing agent is going to have to help in communication. But I always have worked in that way, in communicating with listing agent to make sure that deal comes together so we close.
Well, this is all great stuff. I think that, it might be a topic that we continue to maybe have a discussion on in the future.
Yeah, I like that.
We might try the next time having a call-in where we continue to have these discussions where agents can call in, buyers can call in, and we do some kind of a live show. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, it would be.
We've certainly got the capability here in our secret headquarters.
The Emerald Room.
But how do they get a hold of you, Michael, if they want more information about your experience?
Sure. You can call me at 615-456-4982 or go to my website at www.themichaelswiftteam.com.
themichaelswiftteam.com.
Yes, sir.
And listen, listeners out there, we want you to like and share the Real Estate Halftime Show. You can find us on YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube. Also on Instagram, the Real Estate Halftime Show. Like and share. We appreciate all the followers, and please continue to do so that we can get this content out there more and more and have better guests and more educated guests each and every week. Not that you're not educated, but so that we can continue to expand our footprint.
Sounds good. I appreciate the time,
Thanks for
James.
coming on the show, Michael.
You're welcome.
The Real Estate Halftime Show.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
care.
Appreciate it.
Not a little